I want to do two things in this slot, but we're going to start with sort of the labs version because we had a great question, and it almost felt like I'd slipped the guy a 20 at the end of the previous discussion to ask a question that would tie over to this one, because the dev boards, which was the previous topic, is all about the RISC-V program to take hardware and give it to people to get the software ecosystem energized. And the question at the end of the time was, are we doing anything in RISC-V to sort of cloud-enable developers who say, hey man, I don't want hardware. I just need a VM or something in the cloud, right? And the answer to that question is absolutely, that's the labs program. How many people had heard of the RISC-V labs program before coming in or looking at their schedule? Yeah, that's about right. You guys don't count. You guys don't count, but I do appreciate all of you. Yes? Okay. So the labs program is just that. A lot of words. But what are we trying to do, in a sense? We are trying to make, I'll say, cloud-accessible hardware available for actually two initiatives, not just the question, not just the one that the question asked for. We're trying to make cloud-available hardware to do sandboxing is what we call, I'll say, VM virtual access. All I need is an Ubuntu install in the cloud or a Debian or I just need a VM. I've heard that one before. It's kind of like your teenager just asking you for $10. No, really, Dad, that's all I need. Yeah, right now. But anyway, that's our sandboxing, whether it's VMs, whether it's containers. It's an image to do something where that something is defined by the end user and you basically give them the image. And there are a lot of intricacies in that because, you know, just as we were talking about up front here, there are those sorts of development places, I'll say low in the kernel, in firmware, where you can't just do a VM. Sometimes you need true bare metal access, you need access to the whole machine. So you've got everything from whole machine access in that sandboxing up through, I'll say, highly virtualized sort of container access and everything in between, including hybrid installs, et cetera, right? So that's sandboxes. But the second, almost more powerful, excuse me, the second almost more powerful part of labs is what we call CI, for continuous integration testing. We want to break that into two different pieces, but we want people doing CI of just natural ecosystem pieces for us, right? I'm gonna sign up to track OpenJDK, or I'm gonna track the kernel, or I'm gonna do CI against that. Sign up and say, you know, I got it. A database or something. That sort of CI, or, and this is where the CI piece becomes really powerful, CI as a service. How do most people consume CI testing today? They consume it in a way they haven't even really thought about it, which is they stick it into some action in the back of their GitHub or GitLab repo, and their tests just run magically. Somebody checks something in, and the CI occurs. The tests pass, the PRs go, everything's magic. The power of doing CI on RISC-V hardware and providing it as a service is then you can tie it into all of these development communities where after you say, would you mind taking this one-line patch to enable RISC-V as a platform? And they say, but how am I going to know it tests? Well, hey, I have a CI service here. Tie this into your GitHub repo, and now we can run your tests on RISC-V, and we're just a part of their community or their ecosystem. So that is the vision of the other part of ecosystem enablement for us, and that's a labs program. Now, The Dev Boards program we just got done talking about, off, running, been going for 12 to 18 months. We're optimizing, we're bringing in new hardware, we're going. Labs, we're still working on the vision. So if this stuff excites you, 2 words I want you to walk away with: help and Jeff. You take either one of those words, add at RISC-V.org, and you'll get a hold of me. So I'd love to hear from you, okay? And I intend to tell you a little bit more about this program here at the end. We have a portal address, we have a working group, 4 members. Please come join us, it's all here. We try to meet every 2 weeks. There's our times in UTC. If you're not good at math, I'll help you with that, but that helps you time-wise. Our first meeting, we're done for the year. Our first meeting will be the 17th in January. Please come join us if you do have interest. Just go join the community, and I'll publish agendas and those things. Go from there. That's the shameless plug. Where we are in the process is we are on the verge of defining what it means to be a RISC-V lab. I mean, this is not just going to be a program. It is going to be like development partners. It's going to be a more formal program. So I'm working with marketing on that. If people get qualified as a lab and meet our criteria, we'll put your logo up on the website. We'll talk about that. We are defining the policy and actually have defined the policy. If you've spent any time as a RISC-V member, you understand we love policies. So we've written the policy. We're in the verge of taking that forward. So we feel like we have a good definition for what does it take to become a lab. And it's roughly laid out there in item number 3. We'd want you to have a minimum of 10 boards or 20 cores. You could pick whether you wanted to do CI, sandboxing, some of both, one or both. You'll need a bit of a web presence to talk about what you're doing. If you're going to do a service, that means more web presence than just, I just want to CI test something, regularly for the labs. We want you to participate in our meetings so that you can help us define policy, and we want you to collaborate with us to help us define best practices, because the power in all of this amongst the labs will be the sharing. Will be the, here's how I took on this problem, here's how I'm working on it, or somebody saying, here's what I'm trying to do and I've run into this problem. So that's going to be the power in this group, is helping each other do things. And what I'll point out is my colleague here, Bilal Zafar from 10X Engineering, walked in about 3-4 months ago and said, hey, we want to start doing some of this. And he started asking questions. He started talking about what he's doing. And we've been refining ideas. So Bilal, just raise your hand and wave so that they know who I'm talking about. So Bilal gets a gold star for showing up, being proactive, and helping us drive definition into these things. It's that's going to make this program successful. And that is where we are and what we're up to. There are several resources today that are not yet officially labs that we're trying to pull in, but may be helpful to you as well. So I put these up here as resources. I don't know what ISCAS stands for. We think of it as PLCT. I don't see Wei in the room. Is Wei in the room? Wei Wu, our colleague Wei Wu, the director, is part of that group. He has put together the closest thing to to a complete lab of anybody. He has both sandboxes, he has CIs, he's putting together some patch management things. He is sort of our lead example of that. We have 3 groups. The next 3 groups are HPC groups: Barcelona Supercomputing, Tactical Labs, and I don't know what EPC stands for completely. The E is Edinburgh, so this is out of the UK. They have resources that are taking on some of the HPC initiatives. As we've been trying to define policies for labs, we'd love to have these people come in, because you could envision in the broader scheme of things that somewhere in the RISC-V presence is there, here are our lab resources. If you'd like this, see here, and so you can envision that it's one thing to solve the problem, it's another thing to organize it and make the onboarding successful, and to do it in an organized way. Because again, if we just go back to cloud resources, not all cloud resources are the same. If I'm sitting here in the US, I probably don't want to go halfway around the world for my cloud if I'm doing interactive development. Or if I'm running a data center, I might need to make sure that my cloud resources, or if I'm, like the compile build farm or the Debian folks, they want resources in 2 different geographies. So now, right, so I mean, you start to say, if I want to have a successful program with labs, I need lab entities in just about every major geography sort of around the world. So we could begin to say, well, it's not just enough to say, have Weiwu in China and Barcelona in Europe. I probably need somebody in the US. Okay, hopefully John can fill some of that. But then it's categories and resources and things that go with that. So there is a lot to be done here in this space. So hopefully these folks will continue to work with me. And the 10X folks have been leading our thinking on CI. They're standing up CI instances, the CI as a service. How do we tie it into various programs and doing that in a very creative way? So they're just getting started with it. They are the newest of this group. So watch this space, go look at what they're doing there, help them out, engage with us, use it, and exploit it. Okay? And that is outside of how can you engage, which the obvious things are, hey, come join the group. Work on being a partner if you want to go that far. And the final thing is, if you're working on software, remember these resources are there for your availability. So keep an eye on us, watch us emerge, watch this grow, watch this on our web presence. A lot of good things to come here in the next year. We've made great progress. Again, thanks to Bilal and all the people that have worked with me in this. But let's start with questions on that briefly, and then I want to talk about the Deb partners real quickly. Yes, the gentleman who asked the OSU question, who I did not slip a $20 bill, gets the first question in the back. Yes, sir. Yeah, his question, as I heard it and both understand it, was, how much resources do we have for things like CI, et cetera? Because, and I'll paraphrase, not everybody's use of CI is equivalent, right? I mean, if I'm building something and doing a deep build of, say, the kernel or a compiler or whatever, those builds are massive, massive builds and can take hours. How much resources do we have? The answer is not enough today. How's that for a great answer? We do recognize that, and we're living in a world, at the risk of answering Bilal's environment for him, we're living in a world today where some of it is emulated, which means it's not running as optimally, and some of it is running natively, and we're recognizing and respecting that those worlds have their benefits and or disadvantages. There are different reasons and ways you'd want to use those. As we look to solve what's the hardware that's available to us, the native pieces become a lot more simple here. And as hardware becomes both more powerful and more pervasive, we can solve the native pieces and we'll grow it that way. But in Bilal's particular instance, he's just getting started with a limited set of resources. So that's why let's start small, let's use it, let's exercise it, make sure we have the right architecture, and go from there. In the end, we want big boards, development servers to make as much of this, if not all, well, actually all of this to run natively is the optimal way in the end. Yeah.
Alibaba hoping, beyond hope, that supply chain issues will not continue to be a problem, in which case all these labs are going to get a whole bunch more powerful machines. And the answer to your question might be different come Q2 next year. But right now, I think part of the problem is, most of the biggest lab we have is China Academy of Sciences, and they're sitting with a whole bunch of D1s, which are really tiny machines, not going to probably do what you want them to do. So I think we're probably telling you to be patient, just like almost every manufacturer is telling their customers to be patient at this point. So hopefully things get better.
Yeah, no, that's a great reminder, and the question is fair as well. We need to make sure we have things sized out right to begin with, and that we address as many things as we can as we work our way through it. So, great question. Any other questions on labs here, or labs-related questions, or comments even? Yes, sir. Okay, so what I heard as a question, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it sounds like most of it is Linux-based, or is it going other places? So with the DevBoards program, the previous program, while we certainly try to cover the Linux distributions, we have been working with FreeRTOS, OpenBSD, FreeBSD, and several other distributions, right? So, but when I do a project, I don't pick it based upon what OS, it's, what's the important of the package, what's it going to do for us. So we're trying to hit everything. In the labs world, we're defining it such that it can be whatever people who are going to be a lab want it to be. So specifically, while I've said HPC is something we're interested in, if somebody wanted to stand up and say, no, I want to do an embedded farm, let's run it off another Renode sort of environment, or another Yocto environment, I'd absolutely support that. So we are not trying to dictate all Linux. I think there is a tendency that this world will grow up on Linux and will come together on Linux, but I'm absolutely focused on keeping it as broad and as possible, or as broad as we can. So it's a good question, and it's something we're not trying to prevent. All right, great question. Guy in the back has another question. I'm just going to check and see. We'll give you the last question before I transition to the next topic if there are no other questions. Going once? Okay, final question. Yeah, his question was I will grossly generalize it as sort of similar to the previous one. Are we restricting this to general sort of solutions, or are we allowing for customization? I'm setting this up such that if people want to build a lab or a CI environment that has a combination, has special intricacies, they can absolutely come participate and be a part of that. So it's up to, we're only limited by our own creativity in this to sound like I'm answering yes to everything. That is what we are trying to do. So it would be possible. Somebody just has to want to build it and be willing to go lead that. So did that? No. Oh, you were asking me a general RISC-V question. I would encourage you to go talk to Mark, who left the room, about where RISC-V is headed, and answer that one. I'm just a technical program manager who runs these programs. So I won't take on that one, and we'll defer that one to Mark. So, and I think you get a rigorous answer from Mark on that one, so try it. Yes, Bilal. Absolutely, sure.
To be RISC-V labs connect. So the developer can say, look, I'm looking for something that does this. Can you enable this in your lab? And the people who are trying to build labs or have labs can say, all right, I can tweak my infrastructure and enable you to do that. I think that's where this program right now is, and that's probably what the need is. That if more people can join, this can get better direction and quicker results than the labs people like us trying to build something, hoping for a developer to come and use it, and a developer saying, no, I actually need this, you've built me this doesn't work. So I think.
Right, yeah. There was a great movie like that. It was called Field of Dreams. If we build it, they will come. About a baseball stadium. Go watch that one. Now I've dated myself. All right, I'm going to transition to the latter part, the third program that I run, and just say, hey, is there anybody here who's a development partner? No development partners. Bilal is as well. Real quickly on the development partners, because we're running out of time and I need to finish up here. There's a third program that actually helps in our software ecosystem, but it helps and ties in with all of these. It helps internally, and I'll say internally within RISC-V Foundation more so than in the ecosystem, but it very quickly blurs that line, and that is our Development Partners Program. So we have organizations like Bilal's team as well. Again, Wei Wu runs the Programming Languages and Compiler Technologies team out of CAS in China. We have folks out of India at IIT Madras. We have another Rios Labs there on another slide that are basically providing, I'll say, software skills to our internal working groups. So as somebody says in one of the working groups, I want to create the next great extension to do blah, whatever it happens to be, the next great extension. They start doing their specification. At some point, somebody says, don't we need software for that? And don't we need sale work? And don't I need ACT testing for that? And I need compiler. The development partners are bringing skills to SAIL, to ACT, the architectural compatibility tests that Alan helps spearhead here, SAIL, which Bill does right here up front, and all of our compiler environments, LLVM, GCC, all of their toolchain pieces, into the kernel, into QEMU. Development partners are there to provide those resources. And so we have these development partners. We have a process by which we bring them on board, we interact with them, and then they help us solve these problems as people are working on the extensions. And so an extension provider may say, hey, Jeff, I need help with GCC work on my new extension. And so simply put, we write up an SOW that says we're going to do this. This is what we expect to do. A very little simple SOW, statement of work. This is what we need. This is how we'll know it's done. And then we work with the development partners to get that done, and I can help that integrate into the process, meaning the broader RISC-V process, to get that extension specification done. So any work group participants, RISC-V task group participants here? All right, excellent. So these are people that would know or need to know about the dev partners process, and just sort of the third leg for how we do this. What we find, back to sort of Bilal's comments, what we find is this world starts to all mesh together between labs, between dev boards, between dev partners. They're all trying to solve the problem of how do we get the environment supported to the best of our ability. And so that's why it's sort of the third program I work on. So my real message to the dev partners is thank you so much for your work. It is precious, it is priceless. To the extension providers, task groups, if you get stuck, come talk to us about how dev partners can help. And please join us in any of these other ecosystem discussions as well. So thank you very much. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your conference. We're just getting started. Thank you.